Hi, everybody. This is Peter Schiff. It is Wednesday, January 13th, 2010. Now, if you've already watched the video blog that I recorded earlier today with today's date, there's no reason to watch this one, so go ahead and turn it off. I simply wanted to make one slight change, and it's certainly not significant enough that if you've already listened to the blog that you should listen to this one, which will virtually be identical. Anyway, for those of you who didn't already hear earlier today, I want to talk a little bit again about my Senate campaign. First, in particular, a money bomb that some people are holding this Sunday, January 17th. They originally set up the money bomb and they had a website called doddproof.com. Well, last week, as you know, Chris Dodd dropped out of the race, and so there is no reason to necessarily be Dodd-proof, although he's certainly going to be doing a lot of damage in the next year where he still holds on to that Senate seat, but he's certainly not going to be my adversary if I get the Republican nomination. So what they've done is they've simply forwarded the Dodd-proof website to a Facebook page that is dedicated to my money bomb. Anyway, so if you go to doddproof.com, you'll go to that Facebook page and learn about the money bomb. But in any event, if you want to participate in the money bomb, and I would encourage everybody to do so, this is going to be the first fundraising attempt for my campaign for 2010. So far, we've already raised about $1.5 million since I announced my exploratory committee, and I want to thank everybody who has made those donations possible. But it would be great if you can go back and donate a little bit more, if everybody can donate. And let's make this a significant fundraising day on Sunday, January 17th, to help kick off the Schiff for Senate campaign into the new year. Also, I want to comment again about the phone banking system. I know a lot of people have tried to use the phone banking system. Many people haven't tried it yet. I think it's very important that you do. It just came to my attention today that the phone banking system was not letting people make 10 calls. In fact, when people had been telling me that they had made their 10 calls, I don't know why they had stopped, because my idea was not just to make 10 calls, but to make 10 calls every day. And as it turned out, the system only enabled people to make 10 calls. Well, that's been changed, so right now you can make as many as 50 calls, and if you make 50 calls, you will be manually approved to make 50 more, and we might actually increase that threshold. But the point is not to just call one time, but to make making phone calls part of your daily routine. If all of my supporters can call at least 10 people a day, right now we've got the Republican voters loaded up into the system. Ultimately, we will put more, but we need to reach out to people. And I think the first voters we need to reach out to are Republicans, because after all, I am trying to get the nomination in the Republican Party, so I wanted to reach out to those Republican voters first. And so if you haven't already volunteered, make sure to do so on SchiffForSenate.com, and you get access to the phone banking system. I sent out an email today as well to a lot of the people who have volunteered, reminding them that that phone banking system is there and that we need to take advantage of it. This is a very serious weapon that I think we have in our arsenal for this campaign, one that my competitors don't have because they don't have the volunteers, mainly because there's very little substance to their campaigns, and it's hard for them to motivate people to volunteer. I think a lot of my supporters are very motivated and really believe in the cause that I represent, and as a result, I have a lot of volunteers that can make these calls. So you can get to the Schiff for Senate site, you volunteer, and make these calls. And remember, when you're calling the voters, you're not there to have an argument. We don't want to offend anybody. We simply want to make people aware that I am in the race, let them know about Peter Schiff, let them know what I stand for, encourage them to go to the Schiff for Senate website, encourage them to watch the Peter Schiff Was Right video, maybe mention my mortgage banker's speech that they can watch on YouTube. We just want to encourage them to do their own research and let them know why you think it's important that they support me and why I'm the right person for the job. Ultimately, we'll have more messages in the future that we can send, but let's get started. Let's reach out to as many voters as we can. And I think the real reason that we need to do this is because I am fighting an uphill battle within the mainstream Republican establishment. I mean, certainly my opponents in this race are trying to label themselves as being the outsiders that are going to clean up the mess in Washington. But of course, the only real outsider in the race is me. The only real person that can shake up the status quo is me, which is probably why so many people that represent that status quo want to ignore my campaign. As proof of that, you can look at every single day. There is a major professional politician, an elected official in the state of Connecticut that comes out and endorses one of my opponents. So far, there hasn't been a single elected official who has endorsed me. I mean, despite the fact that I'm obviously the most competent, the most qualified candidate in the race, nobody has endorsed me. As a matter of fact, I wanted to read to you an endorsement that came out just a couple of days ago for Linda McMahon. And the individual who endorsed her is very prominent, a ranking official in the state Senate. This person certainly knows me. I've introduced myself to him. In fact, he was even in attendance at one of the Republican Town Council meetings where I spoke. And he actually came up to me and shook my hand and congratulated me and said that I gave a great speech, and he was very impressed. As are a number of people generally when I speak at these campaigns. And during this presentation, I made it clear how I started. I talked about the fact that I'm a businessman, not a politician, that I started my brokerage firm, Euro Pacific Capital, out of my one-bedroom apartment, that I built it into a firm that now employs better than 100 people with 6 offices. And I talked about my unique qualifications, how I possess not only an understanding of business and entrepreneurship, having run a business for so many years and started it from scratch, but I understand economics, I understand finance, particularly because the business I started is involved in economics and finance, and capital markets, and money management, and asset management, and investment banking. And I also talk about the fact that I was one of the few people in that profession that warned about the economic crisis. I wrote a book, Crash Proof, predicting it. I went on television shows, warning about it. I spoke at conferences around the country, warning about the crisis. So that put me in a unique position where I have an understanding of the economy far beyond any of the other candidates in the race, and I combine that with real-world entrepreneurial business experience. Now, with that in mind, listen to this endorsement of Linda McMahon, and I'm going to read a quote from what this official said. Quote, "Washington is on a crash course with financial disaster, and our decisions today will make or break our future. I support Linda McMahon as the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate because, unlike anyone else in this race, she has built the business from the ground up. She understands how to balance a budget and meet a payroll. And most importantly, she knows what it takes to create jobs and put people back to work." Now, first of all, he starts off his endorsement by warning about a financial crisis that's coming, that we're on a crash course. Well, those are my words. You would think that this individual was endorsing me based on that lead-in. He's not. He's endorsing Linda McMahon. And what really bothers me about this quote is he goes out of his way to say that she is the only candidate in this race to have started a business from scratch, knowing full well that I'm also a candidate in this race and that I started my business from scratch. But unlike Linda's business, that is entertainment, her business is selling tickets to a show, to sex and violence, and again, there's nothing wrong with these things. They certainly appeal to a lot of people, including me at times. I mean, I'm not a big wrestling fan, but I certainly watch movies that have sex and violence. I admit that, and there's nothing wrong with entertainment. But I don't think it's particularly relevant to our economic situation. But to single Linda McMahon out as the only person who has started a business and met a payroll, when I'm obviously in the race and have done the same thing, it's ridiculous. And certainly my business experience is more relevant than hers, and my understanding of economics and finance is superior. Certainly, if you think that there's an economic crisis coming, the person you'd want in the Senate is somebody like me who not only understands it, but predicted the crisis that we're already in. But I think my point here is that many people in the Republican Party, I think, are still threatened by my candidacy. They're part of the status quo. They don't want a real insider to win this race. They don't want to let somebody like me in. So the other candidates can pretend that they're insiders. They can pretend that their agents have changed, but all they represent is the status quo and more of the same. So the real way to get my message out there is to bring it directly to the people. There is a big movement out there. There's this Tea Party movement. I personify that movement. I'm the one that's going to take the Tea Party movement directly to Washington, and with your help, we can bypass the politicians and bring my message directly to the people.